So a few days ago, I put out a video about the tier list review that I had for Pride One, and a lot of y'all, not so much that it wasn't understood what I was saying, but a good number of you guys that I was able to respond to or at least acknowledge were pretty much saying that you don't believe that W engines should be as important or critical when it comes to talking about the value of a character, at least in Zenless Zone Zero. And that baffled me a bit, only because these aren't normal weapons. Like, the W engines in Zenless aren't, I don't know how else to explain it without saying that they're really just like Honkai Impact 3rd. The weapons in this game are very reminiscent to how Impact 3rd weapons work, where they essentially give you an entirely second half to the character's kit, otherwise known as completing the character. If we look at Impact 3rd for just a brief moment, some of the characters in that game, or all of the characters in that game, especially the S ranks, have a standard kit that is either powerful or not powerful, and then their weapon is actually what completes whatever else is going on. For instance, you can look at Raiden, who gets when her original weapon came out, the Hersher of Thunder, she had a 40% lightning damage increase just for equipping the weapon on top of a new move. Then when you equip her new weapon, I think she gets a brand new move as well on top of the damage and some other stuff. So ultimately, they do things that they otherwise would not have access to do. It's not like some games where the entire character's kit is exactly the character's kit, right? But in Zenless, I'm not saying that these weapons have some hidden mechanic that's locked behind whatever and like the character doesn't have that built into their kit, right? No. What I am saying though is they add something of value that otherwise wouldn't be there. If we come into the game for just a brief moment, some of the characters kind of work without a weapon, right? Like Lycan, I don't really need his signature weapon. It's not that big of a deal, but I am using Hellfire Gears. Now, Hellfire Gears is something that I want to talk about specifically for Colada. Colada just got recently got fixed with the whole stun bug thing, but that doesn't necessarily fix her in terms of if we're comparing her to Lycan versus Colada. She's still not on his level. Lycan's stun value is just insane on top of the no need for energy compared to her, but her weapon does make up for that. While off field, the equipper's energy regen increases by 0.6 seconds, and when using an EX special attack, the equipper's impact is increased by 10% for 6 seconds, stacking up to 2 times. That is directly related to Colada in the way that the game is kind of pointing you to play as Colada, because it involves her EX special. You know, you can do like 1-2 EX special, 1-2-3-4 EX special. You can do a dash attack into EX special, things like that, right? So it works in her favor on top of having a high base attack value, as well as having the impact stat being the main stat coming from the gear. But then you look at a character like, let's say, Ellen. Ellen is usually my go-to for a number of reasons, but I want to point out the weapon itself and how strong of a weapon this is. Deep Sea Visitor is specific to Ellen and no one else. Now, maybe if Miyabi comes out in the future and she happens to be an ice type character that's also built around basic attacks and dodge counters and things like that, maybe that'll work in her favor, and then maybe you can use the Deep Sea Visitor, but that is still having a limited weapon that another limited character can use. In Ellen's case, there is not a single other weapon in the game that gives Ellen as much value as the Deep Sea Visitor does. Not only is she getting a free 25% ice damage increase, which is basically the equivalent of having a disc drive with the main stat, which allows you to now play around with some things. So if you are running a max ice team, Lycan and Sokaku, you no longer need to run a main element disc drive, and instead you can replace that with attack percent, penetration ratio, whatever it is that goes in that slot and whatever you feel like doing. But then upon hitting an enemy with a basic attack, the equipper's crit rate increases by 10% for 8 seconds. When dealing ice damage with a dash attack, the equipper's crit rate increases by an additional 10% for 15 seconds. Both of these things being built into the way that you play the character. You're always going to be using your dash attacks because that's how you get your scissor stacks. You're going to be using your basic attacks because that's what you use the scissor stacks on in order to trigger the flash freeze timing. Both of these being calculated separately isn't as drastic of a deal. But when I'm looking at this and I'm only level 40, I can probably go all the way up to, I think it's level 80 in the game if I'm not mistaken, which means this crit value goes up even higher than what it is right now. And then when we factor in the fact that her core passive, right, the core skill itself gives her a free 100% crit damage just for using the basic attacks. Ellen is all about dodge counters, abusing the dash moves or the dash itself into her combos, and then being able to stop and start her momentum whenever she feels like it. This is huge for a character like that. No other attack weapon in the game that I'm aware of. And in fact, let's just run over here to baby girl all the way in the back. Back here in the gadget store of Galaxy. We can come over to the database and I can pretty much look at the rarity of something. Let's go with attack types. And then, oh, I don't even have S rank weapons. Wow, I thought she would have had those in here, but this still makes up for it, right? These are all the current attack type weapons in the game that I'm able to look at that are not S rank weapons. So let's go through it, right? Street Superstar, base main stat is attack percent. We now have Starlight Engine Replica, base attack percent. We have Housekeeper, attack percent. We have Drill Rig, Red Axis, which is energy regen. She doesn't care about that. And then we also have Starlight Engine being attack percent as well. So a lot of what's happening here, right? None of these are benefiting her in any way, shape, or form in the same way that she's benefited from her own W engine. And so, yeah, you could use the Starlight Replica or engine and get away with something. You could use Street Superstar and then have the mega attack percent just like you would from the Brimstone, right? Brimstone is an amazing option. You could do these things, but you see that they just don't do the same, or rather they don't bring the same value that it would specifically for Ellen. This works universally for any attack character, and it, you know, you can make do with that. But once you start getting towards end game, or even mid game for that matter, towards these characters, and then when you guys really separate the, I want to say it's the mentality. Some of y'all have the mentality that, you know, you can just mash through it. It's easy. You don't have to think about anything, which is fine. You can keep that mentality, but you're going to get hit with a hard wall. Everyone so far has openly admitted this. Obviously not me, because I never went into the game thinking that, but some of the creators like Gotcha Gamer or some players like Sarah, all the people that I've spoken to directly about this have all admitted, hey, there's a hard wall here that once we reach this end game point, or what could be considered end game, we do need to lock in. We need to know when to parry. We can't just, you know, spam parry because we heard the sound, because enemies start taking away your parry assist meter so quickly in the game. You can't just dodge because some enemies change up their attack timing. Some are super aggressive. Like, there's so many different factors that go into the game. Of course, you're going to want as much performance or damage performance as possible when it comes to your main DPS character of all characters. Even if I'm not looking at my DPS characters and I come in here and I'm looking at Rena, for instance, right? Rena is one of those characters where she values the penetration ratio because of what she's able to do in her kit. Not only that, but she also has this, which is going to be able to increase her penetration ratio, or rather give her penetration ratio to the entire team up to a certain percentage, which is great for everybody. And at first, like I always tell you guys, I thought that maybe this would be a little bit more difficult to pull off, but the more I play Rena, the more it's like, this is basically permanent. There's no reason that anybody should be thinking that this particular penetration buff isn't permanent, because it is. So now you have that. You have the additional shock that she can provide depending on the team that you have, which you should be running her with her core passive active at all times, and everything just kind of flows into place, right? Her special attack does a good chunk of damage, right? The damage multiplier, the daze multiplier, these are really good for the EX special attack. And so now you think, okay, well, she needs energy, right? Because Rena has a pretty high energy cost for her skill. So how am I going to get this? 60 out of 100 is pretty big. You have to look at the weapon, right? Some weapons just don't do this. I'm running Slice of Time right now, and let's read what it does. It still gives me the penetration ratio, which I love that. But then it says any squad member's dodge counter, EX special attack, assist attack, or chain attack respectively generates X amount. So right now it's 29 more decibels, which are your ultimate meter, and generates 1 energy for the equipper, not multiple, 1. Now, of course, you would think, hey man, well, this is saying that, you know, dodge counters and EX special attacks and assist attacks and chain attacks, all of this stuff is going to give me 1. This would be great. The problem with this is it only triggers once every 12 seconds. The cooldown for each type of attack is independent of others, which that part is good. Passive effects of the same name do not stack. So now, if you were a player that was just mashing, you aren't aware of any of this. You're not paying attention to when you're using your dodge counters. You're not paying attention to when you're getting your EX special attacks, who's using them, the 12-second cooldown on when the last time you did it, the assist attacks. Most of you didn't know about quick assist until all of the other creators started talking about it. Even though it's in the game, it doesn't tell you how to trigger it except for 3 characters, 3 out of the 5 characters that can use it, something like that. And then of course, chain attacks, which chain attacks definitely don't happen every 12 seconds. And they happen in a much further split out duration, right? Or an interval of time, depending on how you're playing the game, who's doing the days, so on and so forth. If a lot of you guys are playing Rena, and Rena is supposed to be this character that's not on field as often as you would want her to be, well, now you have to find a way to keep the other characters on field while also still being able to initiate chain attacks, assist attacks, EX special attacks, and dodge counters. They can't do an assist attack if Rena is not the one helping them do the baton pass, essentially, or unless you're getting hit. You don't want to get hit, right? So there's so many different factors that go into the game when it comes to how you should be playing the game. And I don't want to like make this like, oh yeah, you need to play it this way or else. I'm only pointing out the differences in these weapons. These W engines make or break a lot of builds, not the character specifically, but the build. If I were to show you guys, even with Grace, I think I have Weeping Gemini, and she should be the last one that I kind of have to point out here. But I just got Weeping Gemini from a random pool, right? Weeping Gemini is a great option when you don't have her signature weapon. In fact, I think it might be the second best outside of the Battle Pass Light Cone. Whenever a squad member inflicts an attribute anomaly on an enemy, the equipper gains a buff that increases anomaly proficiency by 30, stacking up to 4 times, which is huge, right? 30, 60, 90, 120. That's a crap ton amount of anomaly proficiency, but you now have to stack the attribute anomaly 4 times. That's a lot just to get the value out of this light cone. You have an attack percent for your main stat buff, and the effect itself expires whenever the target recovers from stun or is defeated. 9 times out of 10, if it's a mob, it's going to get defeated before you can trigger an attribute anomaly on it 4 times. And you're not going to be able to trigger an attribute anomaly on something 4 times while it's stunned unless you know your combos, which again, most players do not, because they don't recognize combos as what they are. So if you're not able to do any of this stuff, you're not aware of the game, playing with these light cones is basically giving yourself a debuff, because in order for you to maximize the value out of what you're doing, I don't know why I call these light cones, I'm used to Starro, but in order for you to maximize the value out of these W engines, you have to change the way you play certain characters. And this changes for everyone in the game, right? I'm telling you guys that the W engines in this game at a base game, right? Base 1.0, these are like baby mode. Hey, learn how to play the game. You want to be able to, you know, if one of these light cones or one of these W engines talked about building up anomaly, well, now I know I need to focus on building anomaly. If one of them talks about like this one, right? When an EX special attack hits an enemy, one of these things happens. So now this is telling me, hey, I need to focus on using EX special attacks as much as possible. But this particular weapon doesn't give me the energy that I would want in order to keep up Piper's EX special attack, or anybody for that matter who happens to be an anomaly based character that can use the Roaring Ride. So it changes how you approach whatever it is that you're doing. If I were to go and grab, where is it at, in the store if I'm not mistaken, here we go, and I came in here and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go get Fusion Compiler, right? Fusion Compiler is Grace's signature weapon, and this weapon is cracked for a number of reasons. One, instead of attack stat as the main stat, you now have penetration ratio, and something that I've been testing out with anomaly characters, because they kind of ignore the days meter as it is to deal their damage. They don't care about crit because anomalies can't crit. Now you really want penetration ratio. Since you only have one way to get penetration ratio in the game, which is going to be your disk drive, right? The main stat disk drive, you're only able to get up to a certain amount. I think that amount is like 31% or 32%, something like that. But if you were to have a weapon that also doubled down on penetration ratio, where now you're getting as close to 100% as possible, 60%, 70%, 80%, whatever the case may be. And now your anomaly is starting to deal what could be considered true damage. A lot of my mobile players would know what I'm talking about when I say that, right? Or like my card game players, dealing true damage means that you ignore everything. The defense of the enemy doesn't matter. The resistances to the enemy doesn't matter. Like, eliminating all of these resistances that the enemy may have in order for you to deal as close to your true damage as possible, that's the goal for any DPS character. And the anomaly characters, or characters with penetration value, have all of that, right? That's the first step, or rather as close as they can get to it. Then the weapon increases her attack by 12%, and when using a special attack or EX special attack, the equipper's anomaly proficiency is increased by 25 for 8 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. Now, I just showed you guys the Weeping Gemini and how you're supposed to play with that weapon and how those anomaly proficiency stack up, you know, and of course it says once you get the attribute anomaly to happen, right? 4 times, then you're going to get blank stacking up to whatever. But this weapon is designed to play exactly like how I've been showing you guys how to play Grace. Basic attack, grenade, basic attack, dash attack, grenade, all these different things. She has mad movement, if you will, right? Grace is a high mobility character. So this weapon is geared towards playing Grace with a high mobility mindset. When you're playing her, and the key thing there is like special attack and EX special attack, right? A lot of the other ones were just EX special attack, meaning you needed energy in order to activate that. But in this particular case, you don't. Grace is one of the few characters in the game that loves using her regular special attack because she still gets all the benefits from it as if it were an EX special attack. She just doesn't get the crazy, right? Like 9 grenades that pop out of nowhere for her EX version. She doesn't get that, but she doesn't lose anything for using her grenades either when they're just regular. And with her signature W engine, well, now you're getting rewarded for it because this stacks up to 3 times, giving you a free 75% anomaly proficiency forever. Why is it forever? Because there's no cooldown on this except for the 8-second part. They're all calculated separately, and if you keep re-triggering it, which will happen every 8 seconds until you switch off, you will constantly have this. You're gonna have penetration ratio, and you're gonna have the 12% attack increase to help out with whatever's going on. And of course, this being a standard, well, guess what? Now when it is a standard, I can eventually get this S5 or this P5, whatever value we're going to be using for that, so that I don't have to worry about anything going on. Boom, 24% attack and 50 anomaly proficiency, stacking up to 3 times every single time you perform correctly, right? This is crazy good. 24% penetration ratio, and I see it right now, the max level is 60, not 80. So now I'm aware of that. If we look at the Weeping Cradle, which is Rina's weapon gives you penetration ratio, the same thing that I said before. We're not gonna have that maxed out. And then of course, off field, right? While the user is off field or the equipper is off field, the energy regeneration increases by 0.6. So basically you're getting 1 energy per second, give or take some of the energy, right? You're also going to be able to increase your squad's damage by the 10% for 3 seconds, which at this point is pretty much permanent. And you're also going to be able to increase that damage even further just by being the character, right? By playing Rina, it's super easy to get across. And so you don't have to stress about a lot more than you would if you weren't using the signature light cone, and you get the best main stat, which is penetration ratio for a character like that. Last character that I want to talk about, or rather the last W engine that I want to talk about, would be the Steel Cushion. And I'm only using these because 1, they're standard weapons, they're already in the game. 2, I already know the limited banner weapons are going to be geared towards limited characters. And 3, these standard weapons are geared towards the standard characters. Obviously, you can use them on other characters if you happen to get them, but I'm really trying to drive it home that we are in base 1.0 of Zenless. We're going to get 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Difficulty is going to increase. Aggro is going to increase from the enemies. We're going to get new modes. We've seen it in every single game. And the best game for you guys to look at as far as a track record goes, if you want to know what's going to happen in the future, Honkai Impact 3rd is more than likely going to be the one that you want to look at and see, like, what did they do? When did they do it? How did they do it? Why did they do it? How did the community perceive it? All these kind of things. That's where you want to start looking at. So as I said, the last one here is Steel Cushion. Now, the crit rate is awesome because you're going to guarantee closer to 100% crit rate. But I really want to pay attention to the fact that this now makes it so that Nekomata plays exactly how you want to play the character. The equipper's damage increases by 25% when hitting the enemy from behind. We've already talked about this. I've talked about this. Nekomata excels at being able to move and weave in between enemies. She has a high iframe count, so she can pretty much abuse when she gets hit or when she doesn't want to get hit, things like that. And she's got some crazy good damage attached to her. On top of the fact that she's physical, everything she does builds up assault, which means she's going to be able to pop bleeds left and right, especially on mobs. She does 1, 2, 3 cross slash, and then the mob is getting assault. It's gone. So now you have one of the highest base attacks in the game right now, right? 684. Then you give her some high attack. She's got free crit rate just from this weapon. You give her a main stack crit. It's over. These are the type of weapons that are built into the game. So while I completely understand that it's not feasible, quote unquote, for a new player or a free-to-play player to want to grab the W engines, I am not saying to come into your signal search here, right, and then go wailing on the limited banner weapons. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm also saying, and I'm going to keep repeating this just so that you guys are aware that at least I said it. And if it happens in the future, it happens. If it doesn't, that's great for everybody. This game is not going to be one of those games where horizontal investment, especially early on, is going to reward you more than it would if you finished out the vertical investment first and then moved on to another character. Now, I will say 2 to 3 teams at a time. Go ahead and pick your two or three teams that you want, right? A free-to-play team and then 2 possible limited banner teams. That's great. Do that, and then you can start working on other characters. But if you're every banner, you're over here in the limited trying to get, Ellen. Okay, now I want the new Ellen. Okay, now I want Ellen's sister. Now I want Ellen's brother. Now I want Ellen's dad. And none of them have their signature weapon. You're going to be in for a real rough time. Not only because you can't build all those characters as quickly as you can pull them, but you're also going to be limited on all the resources for it. Then you don't have any of their signature weapons, so it's going to make it super hard for you, because these standard weapons that we've already seen, they aren't equipable, or rather, they aren't beneficial to every single character that may or may not come out in the future. But that's going to be it for me today, guys. I don't want to talk your ear off too much. I just wanted to establish all that while I'm gone, right? So once I get back, we'll crack down on the guides. I really wanted an Ellen guide out before I left. I don't think I'm going to be able to get that out. So if I do get it out, it'll probably come out after she's gone, which is really going to suck. I know, and I probably won't even do it at that point unless it's just for me, but we'll see. Hopefully I get something out and we'll put it together. But anyway, let me know how you feel about what I said, how you feel about W engines. I get it. A lot of y'all are going to pull characters because you want it. Some of you guys just have that Genshin mentality where it's more beneficial for you to have characters over a complete character. More power to you, right? I'm not here to force anybody to do anything. I'm just here to plant the seed and give you guys the information that I would love to have if I were getting into a game like this myself. I appreciated it when I found certain creators that were doing this for Nikke, certain creators that were doing this for Brown Dust 2, because I was lost when I played those games. And thankfully, even Honkai Impact, thankfully I had some creators that I was able to look at, get the information, go to the Discord, go to the Reddit, and then get guided in a direction to where now I have a pretty cracked out free-to-play account without wasting resources, and I have all the weapons and characters that I would want, and I'm able to complete everything in the game, no problem. So it is what it is. This is just coming from somebody who's done the grind, if you will. So when I tell you guys it is feasible and it is reasonable and it's definitely doable, that's not coming from a place of bullshit. I'm not telling y'all something just because I want everybody I'm a Hoyo shill, like you should spend money because Hoyo pays me when you buy the light cone. I don't get anything when you guys buy light cones, weapons, W engines, none of that, dude. I'm just trying to help out. Anyhow, I can't say my user outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube. Smell you later.